Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's stream. We are going to be discussing How BlackRock Conquered the World by James Corbett. And another one of these documentaries where Corbett does a lot of research and we get caught up pretty quickly in the space of an hour as to what's been going on. And I think it would be hard for people to say they've not heard of BlackRock, even if you aren't particularly tuned into financial news. You will have heard of this company. And it's characterized as the fourth branch of government. It has grown to be so large and it has brought in so many former government officials or workers into its ranks in order to help make policy. So if you used to run the the Bank of Canada, for example, you'll get hired as a vice president. Or if you used to run a bank in Switzerland, you'll get hired as a vice president in order to help not only improve the bank's reach, but help it sell more products. The big takeaway for me from this documentary was more clarity on ESG. Now, if you don't know what ESG is, I'm learning too. Environmental Social Governance Scores, ESG. And Corbett, I think, correctly characterizes it as social credit scores for corporations. It's a way for BlackRock to influence how investing happens based on their agenda, particularly tied to the climate and other things. Interestingly, BlackRock has had hundreds of hedge fund managers sign on to this ESG system, but there's also been a massive pushback and divestment. So we've seen state governments divest themselves from BlackRock specifically under the phrase of not trying to um, be aligned with woke values. So Fink might have pushed this too hard, such that it ended up getting noticed and pushed back on. And it seems that he's walked it back a little bit, but Corbett seems convinced he's going to work on it through the back door. So he's not just going to give up because a few people divested. I've been referring to Larry Fink. Who's Larry Fink? So he is the person who is in charge of BlackRock, which originally broke off from a company called Blackstone, and it was an inside joke between the two men. I don't know if that's very funny, but apparently they think it's very funny. But Fink himself uh, very much has this idea of being involved in everything. And he is the person who originally either the first or one of the first people to work with CMOs, collateralized mortgage obligations, part of which led us to the 2008 financial crisis. This is the sort of person we're talking about. And he made billions for his company. He was at First Boston or one of those banks beforehand. One day he lost $100 million and he was fired for that, but he had made billions before then. He uses phrases like a net zero world, this fake climate emergency that none of these people believe in. And part of it is why are they buying waterfront resorts if they believe the entire planet's going to get swamped by rising oceans? And they keep flying around in private jets. So watch their actions, watch what people do, don't listen to what they say. None of these people pushing this net zero agenda believe it based on their actions. So there was also something interesting. As I say, Corbett's catching us up effectively with this documentary on what's been going on behind the scenes with BlackRock. So one of the things is ESG, so environmental social governance, as I said, social credit scores for corporations. There is also a very interesting great reset of sorts that happened in August of 2019. So in August of 2019, I wrote down August the 15th, maybe that's the date. A white paper is issued by BlackRock talking about what to do if there's another financial crisis. And a week after that white paper comes out, there is a big meeting for finance people in Jackson Hole. It happens pretty regularly. This is apparently discussed, and as soon as September, we start to see tracking alongside with the banks. If we think Corbett talks about these two separate pools of money, this retail money and the bank's money, what they're doing with the Federal Reserve, and then what they're doing with the general public, that we started to see, instead of divergent lines that these lines started to track together. And he shows this chart. And part of that was one of the instruments proposed in the white paper are these SEFFs, but basically they're strategic gobs of money, which are put in different vehicles and in different places in order to, the phrase is, go around the interest rate channel. So they've seen how far they can go with putting it out into the market and dealing with interest rates, and they want to put the money into the market and go around the interest rates. Um, and this was proposed by BlackRock, accepted by the financial Illuminati, you could say, and it was implemented. And part of this also ties to a desire for more global digital currencies, which probably is a different episode in and of itself. Corbett's done a lot of work on this as well. But digital currencies are bad for any number of reasons. They are the last step towards total control of us in the natural order. Because if there is a digital currency and it's tied to some wallet and the government has the ability to switch that on and off, you can lose your money. Whereas now it's not that much of a barrier, but at the moment there is still some kind of barrier. There is cash, there are credit cards, there are bank accounts where the government can't entirely seize everything. But if we move towards a digital currency and the government has control of that, they'll have control over every part of our lives. They can threaten us, and they can implement things like social credit scores for humans, not just these social credit scores for companies. So at the heart of BlackRock's wealth is a proprietary program known as Aladdin. And Corbett does an excellent job of talking about how it was originally conceived. It was this back in the 90s. Somebody would print out all the investments everywhere and at the end of the day and match them against the last days and look at what changed. And he realized, I could just have a computer do this. I don't need to do this manually every day. Well, this provides, if you could program something to do this, it would provide tremendous insight into investments. And that's what Aladdin is. They've actually stopped publishing how much under management is reliant on Aladdin. So it's $21 trillion was the last time. And this was representing, I think, a third of the wealth of the clients. Now, BlackRock will say, well, we're not in control. Aladdin just notices things and makes suggestions. However, this doesn't account for the fact that BlackRock has developed a program called Monarch. Monarch is aligned with Larry Fink's thinking about getting rid of humans, not necessarily in a eugenicist way, although I wouldn't be that surprised. Corbett doesn't bring it up, but I wouldn't be surprised if Larry Fink is a eugenicist. But he's certainly anti-humanist when it comes to work and jobs. And he sees a great replacement of humanity with machines. Now, just to throw out some acronyms to make sure we're all on the same page, there's NLP, ML, AI. These are not interchangeable. So neurolinguistic programming, machine learning, and AI. These all can work together to inform a program. So what Monarch is doing is going through speeches that CEOs give, different movements of investments, and trying to find out what is it that makes an investment win or work. And can I find that out? And if I can find that out with some degree of certainty, can I then predict the next market winners? So the NLP portion of that is watching speeches of the AI is watching speeches of the CEOs or listening to conference calls that they give, investing calls, and trying to tie that to the performance of the stock and seeing if there's any corollaries. And if you think about it, just on the natural level, it seems reasonable to think about something like that. Match that with machine learning. So machine learning differing from AI in that there's an ability to correct problems. So the AI spits out an answer to something, and you can correct it and say, no, that is not right. Here's the correct answer. That's machine learning. So machine learning is either something manual where a human operator is doing it, or a program is training the AI. So that machine learning. And then, of course, I think most people watching this today know what AI is. So Monarch uses NLP machine learning and AI together to create this model to be even in more control of this. And the implications are such that if there is another global financial crisis, part of it could be very well due to the fact that a large part of global assets, a significant part, is controlled in part through Aladdin as the program and Monarch as this plugin, as this module that works with Aladdin. And all it would take is for the machine to be slightly wrong or the computer to be slightly wrong about something, and it could cause a cascading crisis. So Corbett is less pointing out saying this bad thing is going to happen on this date, and more noting that BlackRock is doing this in the open in front of everybody. And people know about BlackRock, but there's not necessarily any action to take. That they're not taking any action. And he, as usual, because I admire this about James, he's very solutions oriented, and he points towards things that you can do yourself in order to insulate yourself from BlackRock's influence. And I think that's important. Part of that is making sure that you have diverse ways of holding, be it currencies, be it assets, whatever it might be, because if you're, for example, let's say you're holding assets or money in 5 or 6 different forms, and 4 of them fail, that means at least 2 of them will still be good for you. You have to count on, in a crisis, a number of your asset classes potentially failing, or money that you have or funds that you have not being fungible in a chaotic environment. So those are the sorts of things. And Nicholas Nassim Taleb talks about this in Anti-Fragile. Make many small bets. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. Do not rely on everything. And I think ultimately keep your eyes open about what BlackRock is doing. They are in control. They are significant shareholders of many different parts of the economy, and they're also significant players in world finance. It's definitely, if you had a chance to watch the documentary, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. If you haven't, I would just caution you that it's a little more technical in parts. If you need to slow it down, rewatch a portion of it just to make sure, feel free to take notes. I mean, that's what I did to put together today's discussion. It's not entirely straightforward how things work because of the complexity of the modern financial market. It's complex on purpose. Part of it is to confuse people, bore people, they tune out, and so they don't realize what's happening to them. But I would really encourage you to take a look at all the different things that he points out in here. They're all relevant, and they can help inform you on the ground. You're not you may not be a hedge fund manager. You may not be the head of a country. You may not be a big cheese in any part of that life of a state, but you can be in charge of yourself, and you can make sure that in your own way you do what you can to be insulated from the larger moves that are playing on a chessboard that none of us have access to. So consider that. In about 15 minutes or so, I'm going to be doing a live stream over on Palestine Bookshelf on the encampments, a very fine documentary which was produced in part by Macklemore and covers the whole controversy of what started at Columbia University, the encampments, and then spread to 60 universities worldwide. Very fascinating documentary. We'll start that over in about 15 minutes on Palestine Bookshelf. But to conclude here with James Corbett and How BlackRock Conquered the World, I can only say you should check it out. I don't even know if it's an hour. I don't even know if it's an hour long. Certainly not more than an hour. Maybe something like 52 minutes. I encourage you to learn more. BlackRock is in the news more and more, and you should know who they are, what they're doing, and how you can protect yourself. Okay, I don't see any questions in the chat. So if you're watching this later and you want to keep the conversation going, please feel free to leave comments and teach me. I'm always happy to hear links. Steven, you should check out this, or hey, I don't know about that. And we can learn together. That's always the hope of everything that's happening on this channel, whether it's the videos or the live streams. We can hopefully learn together. Perry. Hi, Perry. If there aren't any other questions, I will end the stream and head over to Palestine Bookshelf. You're welcome to join me in about 15 minutes over there. Thanks for stopping by. And as I said, please feel free to keep the comments going afterwards if you're watching this on replay.